everybody. Welcome to this protest. On behalf of CND, Stop the War, the International No to NATO Network, and a massive number of campaigns and organisations, welcome to this protest to say no to Trump, no to NATO. We're here because down that road this evening, President Trump is going to be meeting with the Queen of England alongside all the leaders of the NATO states. We say this is nothing to celebrate. They're here to celebrate 70 years of NATO. We know that 70 years of NATO has been 70 years of nuclear weapons, of militarisation, of war, of aggressive expansionism, and now NATO is going global. So welcome to all of you who've come from across Britain, across Europe, from the United States to give our peace message to those leaders of NATO. But welcome also to all of you who've come to protest against Trump, because everything that Trump stands for is criminal, unpleasant and unwanted here in Britain and across the world. We stand in solidarity with the people of the United States against Trump's policies of racism, Islamophobia, misogyny, against human rights, against everything that we stand for as working people and progressive people across the world. So welcome to you all, solidarity, and after this rally we will be marching down to Buckingham Palace to give our message to Trump and to those leaders face to face. So please welcome our first speaker, who's here to represent the Stand Up to Racism Coalition. Please welcome Wayman Bennett, a powerful voice against racism and the appalling policies of President Trump. Welcome, Wayman.
I want to start off by thanking everybody for coming out today against Trump, because Trump is a scumbag, Trump is a sexist, he's a racist, he's a sympathiser to Islamophobia, and above all, he has supported bombing and murdering all over the world. He's attacked the Kurds' right for refugee status. And I want to say this now. Every refugee is welcome here. And what we want, when they say that Boris Johnson and Donald Trump are working together, two twins who are joined at the hip of hypocrisy and lies. We're told that this is going to be our Prime Minister and this is going to be our President. They're both liars and cheats, sexist, racist and homophobes. And I tell you this, they should be behind bars, because when the criminals drink champagne and blame us, we've got two chances to kick them out. I want to say I stand in solidarity with the people that said that Heather Heyer, who was murdered inside America, standing out against anti-Semitism and racism. And what did Donald Trump say? He said there were good people who marched for fascism and racism. And we should not forget that, and we don't forgive that. What's he doing here? He's come to steal our NHS. The guy is a crook and a thief, and we should not allow him to be given a privileged platform. So I want to say this, what we're going to do today, we're not going to stay quiet, are we? Are we going to stay quiet? We're going to march against unity, against war, against everything they stand for, and most of all, we want to say this. I think that both, in the words of Stormzy, both Donald Trump and Boris Johnson are pieces of shit. And what you do with pieces of shit is you flush them away.
Thank you, Wayman. Right, now we're taking over the road and the cars should be stopping now. Are the police stopping the cars? No, come on, stop the cars. Doesn't look good. Come on, come over, come to the front. Well done. Well done.
Well done.
Just what we want to see.
Everybody.
Just what we want to see.
Well done.
Well done. About time too. Right. If you don't know who I am, I'm Murad Qureshi, Chair of Stop the War Coalition. And I'm going to introduce our next speaker. We have speakers not just from here, the United Kingdom, but from mainland Europe, from the International Peace Bureau, and Not War, Not NATO, Rain and Bro.
Hello, dear friends in peace. What is NATO? NATO is not the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. NATO is a North Atlantic terrorist organization which makes war all over the world. And this NATO will expand to all over the world. So it is our fight to stop NATO. And you know, Trump is lying when he's opening his mouth. We all know this. But once he was speaking the truth when he was saying that NATO is obsolete. Yes, NATO is obsolete since many, many years, and our fight will bring NATO to the end. And when Macron, the French minister, is saying NATO has a brain death, yes, he's right. NATO is politically deaf, and we are the people who are bringing the NATO to the end. Why? We need the money NATO is spending for military purposes. I see the pictures of healthcare. I see the pictures of education and schools for social purposes and for fighting against climate change. We need the money NATO is spending for wars all over the world. And that is the reason we are here. NATO means war, NATO means military spending, and we are staying for the alternative. And we never forget, we don't want the confrontation with Russia and China. We are friends of the Russian people, we are friends of the Chinese people, but NATO wants to have these confrontation. That is the reason we want to overcome NATO. Let's fight for disarmament. Let's fight for the end of NATO. That is our dream. The dreams will come to reality by our actions today and in future. Thank you.
Many thanks, Rainer. Thank you for all your solidarity from the communities across Europe. Now, it's fantastic to see such a great turnout this evening from the Kurdish community. Thank you for your support and solidarity. And it's a great pleasure to welcome our next speaker, Elif Gun, an activist from the Kurdish People's Assembly. Welcome, Elif.
Friends, comrades, I want to begin by expressing our deepest condolences with the family and friends of Jack Merritt and Saskia Jones and all those affected by the events on London Bridge last Friday. On behalf of the unity of democratic organisations and the Kurdish People's Assembly in Britain, we speak today with one and only strong message in total condemnation of NATO. Not just NATO under the racist Donald Trump, not just NATO under the dictator Erdogan, not just against the genocidal actions of NATO member Turkey, but the very and true existence of NATO itself. Let's be clear and simple. NATO is invading northern Syria as we speak today. NATO is waging a war on the very people who fought and defeated ISIS on behalf of the whole world to keep us safe wherever we are. And NATO has become a global security threat. Do not be mistaken. Our world is on fire. Our cities are on fire. From Algeria, Chile, Ecuador, Haiti, Hong Kong, Iran, forces defeated ISIS with a sacrifice of 11,000 fighters and tens of thousands wounded. While fighting and territorially defeating ISIS, the people of northern Syria and beyond have been engaging in a remarkable project of transforming and rebuilding society based on the principles and practices of direct democracy, ecological justice and women's liberation. A model that all of Middle East can take an example of. So we are here today to say that the faster that NATO is broken up, the faster we can stop these desperate murderous schemes and lives can be saved. To say no to NATO today is to say yes to freedom and democracy tomorrow. Jin, Jian, Azadi! Jin, Jian, Azadi!
Thank you, Arif. And we're reminded very clearly that today it's not just no to Trump, but no to Erdogan from our Kurdish comrades here tonight. Another thing about Donald Trump we shouldn't forget, he's a climate change denier and he's backing the oil industry 100%. That's why we've got a speaker now from the UK Students' Climate Network, Sophia Cunningham.
Stopping Trump is not enough. He's just one symptom of a global system which puts profit and business interests above those of humanity. We throw down a challenge to all politicians and leaders to be truthful and honest about the crisis we face. We will hold all politicians, regardless of party or ideology, to account for their inaction on the defining issue of our generation. Over the last year, we have transformed the world climate debate and shown that only youth have the ambition, honesty and clarity to make real change. Trump is not a one-man aberration. He's just another member of a powerful elite which is holding the world for ransom. The youth of the world are going to ensure that the climate becomes and remains the #1 issue for our leaders. We do this not for ourselves, but for all those who are already climate victims, remembering that the impact of climate failure is particularly harsh on the weakest members of society, and those who are punished the most are the least responsible for the crisis we face. We must remember that climate inequality is not a purely international issue, and that the victims of the world's inaction could be seen right here, from those who can't afford to leave flooded areas to the millions affected by fuel poverty. I'm proud to be here today as a representative of my generation, telling adults and Trump, we'll be watching you.
Thanks. Thank you very much indeed, Sophia. We're all with you. Your protests have been inspirational. Now I see many placards here this evening. Trump hands off Palestine. Free Palestine. The cause of the Palestinian people is one of the greatest and most urgent causes of our time. So I'm very pleased to welcome Ben Jamal from the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you, Kate. We are here because we stand united in opposition to the politics that Donald Trump represents. A politics that believes that rights can be denied to people because of gender, race, sexual identity or religion. A politics that believes that when it comes to healthcare or the needs of the planet, the profits of large corporations matter more than the rights and the needs of the many. And a politics that believes that conventions on human rights and international law can be disregarded, can be shoved aside in favour of the law of the jungle. Well, we are here because we believe that these principles of justice and rights matter, and that sometimes before them, even the President of the United States sometimes must have to stand naked. And I apologise for planting that image in your mind. Now I am here because part of the politics
that Donald Trump represents, the politics of ethno-nationalism, is the same politics that has denied to the Palestinian people for more than 70 years their basic right to live in freedom, justice and equality in their historic homeland. Now Trump, in alliance with Israel, is trying to sell to the Palestinian people a deal, the so-called deal of the century, a deal that bribes them with promises of huge economic investment in return for giving up their core, inalienable collective rights. Give up, he says, your right to a capital in Jerusalem. Give up your right to a state. Give up your right to live self-determined lives. Give up the right of your refugees to return to the homes and the land from which they were expelled in 1948 and 1967. The message from Trump and Israel to the Palestinian people is stark and clear. Give up your struggle for freedom, and in return we may allow you, perhaps, to live a little more comfortably within your chains. Well, the Palestinian people will never give up the struggle for justice and for freedom for one reason, because when you are denied the basic rights you are owed as a human being, protest and resistance is not a right, it is an obligation. So that is why today we stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people, because we recognise that the struggle for justice in Palestine is part of the universal struggle for justice everywhere. That is why we say in our thousands and in our millions, we are all Palestinians, and that is why we stand together, united, to say in a loud and clear voice, no to Trump's racism and politics of hatred, no to Israel's system of apartheid, yes to freedom, yes to justice, yes to equality. Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
Thank you, Ben, for reminding us what is happening to the Palestinians whilst we focus on NATO and their 70th anniversary of their existence. I've just seen something in front of me. NATO at 70, time to retire. Well said. Now, one of our favourite banners that we have at Stop the War is cut war, not welfare. And I can't think of a better speaker to reiterate that message than Steve Sweeney from the People's Assembly Against Austerity. Steve.
Thank you very much. Comrades, sisters, brothers, we've come a long way since we were established in 2013. It was our movement that shifted the narrative and put austerity at the heart of the political agenda. It was our movement on the streets that created the conditions that allowed for the rise of Jeremy Corbyn and for the Labour Party to become an anti-austerity party. Now it is fitting that bold leaders are gathering down the world in Buckingham Palace, and you'll never see a bigger display of opulence and greed while they're there taking tea with the Queen, Elizabeth Windsor, the head of a royal family, an archaic institution that shouldn't even exist. And they are discussing destruction, war, and the imperialist carve-up of the world. And we know that war is a political decision, but so is austerity a political decision. Our National Health Service, our welfare state, our schools, our hospitals, and our public housing didn't just fall from the sky. It was working class people that fought for those things, and it is working class people coming together, united, that will fight to defend them. We have a golden opportunity next week to get rid of this government of the rich. Now Corbyn is absolutely right when he describes Boris Johnson as the world's biggest sycophant of Donald Trump. But if you want to defend our National Health Service, don't vote Tory. If you want to defend our public services, our schools, our Sure Start centres, don't vote Tory. If you want to save the planet, invest in green technology and ban fracking, don't vote Tory. If you want decent homes and decent jobs, don't vote Tory. Use your vote next week. Let's end austerity. Let's bring down this rotten Tory government. We say no to NATO, no to Trump, Tories out. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed, Steve. Now I've got a message for women present here. We're going to be doing a visual protest. I can't tell you what it is because it's going to be a surprise, but we need about a dozen women to come round the back of this truck to join in this particular action. So please, I'm requesting any women, if you don't mind, just popping round the back of here and joining in an important visual stunt which will get our message over loud and clear. So thanks very much for your support. Now, I said earlier on that we were standing today in solidarity with the people of the United States in their struggle against the appalling rule of President Trump. So therefore it's a great honour for me to welcome an American activist, a very great American activist, to speak to you today. Please welcome Medea Benjamin from Code Pink. Welcome, Medea.
So Donald Trump thinks that he is well loved here in Europe. Do you like Donald Trump? Let me hear it louder. Do you like Donald Trump? Do you like NATO? Do you like Erdogan? So we have a lot of lousy leaders who are here right now in your capital, saying that they represent us and represent an alliance that is good for the world. So let's look at what NATO has done in the last couple of years. Well, the last 2 decades, they invaded Afghanistan. And how has that worked out? They can't even defeat the Taliban. And then look at what they did in Libya. Destroyed the country, and when thousands and thousands of people flee because of the result of the NATO invasion, then Europe doesn't want to even take responsibility for the refugees and lets them die at sea. So Donald Trump is here to berate Europe and say, you are not spending enough of your money on the military. That idea that you should spend 2% of your gross domestic product on militarism. Do you think that's a good idea? No! Do you think your government should be putting more money in the hands of the weapons manufacturers? No! You are fighting to save your own national health service. We in the U.S. are fighting to get a national health service. We don't want to spend the money we're spending on military. We want it to go into health care. We want it to go into a Green New Deal. We are working with you to say no to militarism, no to war, and no to Donald Trump. Thank you.
Thank you, Medea. Another one of our international speakers from the other side of the pond. This time we've got someone from mainland Europe, an MP from Germany, Alexander Nuhr from the Der Linke party.
Hello friends. Better here. Okay, hello friends, I'm from Germany, member of parliament, just come here in solidarity with you. NATO needs enemies. Without enemies, NATO doesn't exist. So, NATO needs to create new enemies. What we can see is Russia. Russia is an old enemy and a new enemy. Because Mr. Putin is not ready and not willing to subordinate Russia to NATO. This is the reason why Russia is an enemy of NATO. What we can observe now is that China is becoming an enemy. China is becoming an enemy of NATO. It is a longer time enemy of US, but now the United States is managing inside NATO to make China an enemy. The second point I would like to express is that NATO wants to have a new field of operation in the outer space, next to maritime space, next to ground space, next to cyberspace. Now they want to have even the outer space. So we say no to NATO. We don't need this aggressive organization. No to NATO.
Thank you very much, Alexander, and can we thank you also for the work that you do in the German Parliament. Only 2 weeks ago, his party put a motion to say that US troops, which have been occupying Germany since 1945, should finally be withdrawn. So solidarity to the German people, people of peace. It's a great pleasure to welcome our next speaker, who will be known to many of you. He's been active in the anti-imperialist struggle since the days of the campaign for solidarity with Vietnam. Please welcome Tariq Ali.
Friends, let us denounce the activities of imperial war leaders gathering in London today. Though I think NATO is in a huge crisis, Donald Trump and Prince Andrew will have many other things to talk about, which they have in common. And let us start in the name of those who cannot be here. Let us denounce the iniquities, the rights being trampled underfoot of the indigenous people of Bolivia. Where indigenous people, after a right-wing military coup, are being hunted like animals once again in that country, 80% of which is indigenous. So let us send a loud message. We are opposed to all US interventions in South America. Whether it's Bolivia, whether it's Venezuela, whether it's Argentina, whether it's Honduras, US, get out of South America. And we speak to you in the name, as other speakers have said, of the Palestinian people, ignored by the world. Their children being killed every single day, whereas NATO remains silent, defends Israel, and Trump in particular, together with his son-in-law, is in cahoots with the Israeli government. Solidarity with the Palestinian people. Solidarity with the people of Afghanistan, who have been under a war now longer than the Second World War. And solidarity with all those who expose these lies and crimes. Investigative journalists like Julian Assange being tried for publishing stories and crimes about the war. So make sure that Trump hears you outside Buckingham Palace today.
Thank you, Tariq, for showing your solidarity for all the victims of imperialism around the world. Another person who's been active in the anti-war movement for many, many years, even decades, and someone who's one of the founding members of Stop the War Coalition, the convener of Stop the War, Lindsay German.
Thank you very much, Murad, and thanks to everybody for being here tonight. We're here to protest about two things. One is NATO. We're told NATO is a force for peace. That is a lie. NATO is a force for war and has been involved in most of the wars of the last 2 decades in Afghanistan, in Libya, in all of these places. And what they are doing this week is they are trying to get more money for war, more expansion, more carrying on to make sure that they will have conflict wherever they want to, whether it's in Eastern Europe, now in Latin America, and everywhere else. So our first message here tonight is no to NATO. The second message here is no to Donald Trump. Trump is coming here to demand that we spend more on the military and less on our health service. He wants to get his hands on our health service, and we are saying, let's cut weapons, not healthcare. Let's put money into the things we really need, not into making the world a more dangerous place. And they're meeting tonight in Buckingham Palace. There'll be Trump and there'll be the pound shop Trump, Boris Johnson, who is hoping to get elected next week. If we want a world of peace, if we want a world of justice, make sure that you vote next week. Make sure you campaign for an anti-war government, and make sure that on December the 13th we have Jeremy Corbyn in Downing Street. That on its own will not stop the warmongers, but it'll give them a hell of a fright. They call him a security risk, but actually the real security risk is NATO. The real security risk are the arms dealers. The real security risk are the climate change deniers, and that is why we're here tonight, united on all these different issues, to say no to NATO, no to Trump. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much indeed, Lindsay. Now, over the past 2 decades, in the peace and anti-war movement in particular, we've had no greater allies than the Muslim communities in this country. So please welcome our next speaker, Ragad Al-Takriti from the Muslim Association of Britain. Welcome, Ragad.
Thank you, Kate. Dear protesters, back in 2003, Muslim Association of Britain was one of the leading organisations to call for the 2 million man demonstration to protest against the war on Iraq. And today we still stand shoulder to shoulder with all our friends in other organisations, regardless of our differences, to bring together a better world. I say this because at critical times, like the UK elections, we see that exploitation of minorities is at its peak, which causes division. One of the most powerful tools in the hands of those who wish for power and control is spreading hate and division. Exploitation of minorities brings about hatred, dislike, and a horrible place for individuals to live in and progress. Me, as a Muslim woman, and the Vice President of MAB, an organisation established in 1997, which has continued to call for members of our community and other communities to engage and contribute for the betterment of the British society, get to be regularly questioned about our loyalties and true motives behind our activism. It is the policy of defeat by spreading hate and speculation, hoping for people to drop out and disappear. Regardless, we still dream and work for the world to become a more peaceful world without wars. The divisive politics of Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, racism, and any discrimination feeds into hate and fear and results in economic gaps and disengagement. These alliances with Trump administration is a detriment to not only our country and our future. Indeed, it's bad news for the status of world politics and prospects for everyone who lives on this planet. As British citizens must work together to bring about a different world that is about the future of the UK and the rest of the world. Everyone around the world deserves to live in peace, dream of prosperity and a better future for their children. Unfortunately, increasingly, the weapons industry is fanning the flames of conflict, war and violence and reducing the prospects of peace. That has resulted in a refugee crisis around the world bigger than any other before. Now, we are going to continue, and we are not going anywhere, and we will stay here shoulder to shoulder
regard, and thank you for reminding us. When we first demonstrated against Trump on the streets of London, it was against his Muslim travel ban. Now we're demonstrating about his meddling in British elections. Another thing we shouldn't forget, whilst we march up to Buckingham Palace, is the extradition action against Julian Assange. I can't think of a better speaker to talk on that front than my colleague, John Rees from the Don't Extradite Assange campaign. John.
There is one man in this country who perhaps more than any other told us the truth about the Afghan war, about the Iraq war, and about the American military machine. That man is the publisher of WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, and he is currently a political prisoner in this country, held in the Belmarsh high security prison on no charge whatsoever in this country, simply on the say-so of Donald Trump, who wants him extradited to the United States, where he could face 175 years in jail simply for telling us the truth about the wars of the American state. And it is part of the duty of any movement in this country to demand that he be set free. He will never see a jury trial in this country. His extradition trial next February has been moved to Belmarsh prison, where there will barely be any public allowed to see the trial. This is a secret, no jury trial. It is an offence against democracy and against equity and against justice. So raise your voices to stop the extradition of Julian Assange, and think this to yourself. There is one man who is being feted by this government, who should be in jail, and there is one man who is in jail who should be free. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much indeed, John. Now there are many placards out here saying save our NHS. That is a crucial campaign for us today, affecting so many people's lives. So it's a great pleasure to welcome our next speaker, Dr. Sonia Adisara, who is a strong campaigner in support of the NHS. Welcome.
Evening. Who loves our NHS? So my name is Sonia Adisara, and I am proud to be an NHS worker. I am privileged to work for our socialised healthcare system, and it is my duty as a healthcare professional to stand up and fight against the destructive right-wing ideology of Tories and the Trump, who want to undermine and privatise our NHS and put the health of my patients and our NHS at risk. And I am not alone. 500 of my NHS colleagues and 1 million people of the British public have signed my petition to keep our NHS out of trade deals and end privatisation of our healthcare services. And why are we NHS workers so frightened of a Trump Day deal and privatisation? Because we have seen the impact of what happens when private sector invades our NHS. Circa, Carillion, Hitchin, again after again, failure after failure. When profit is put before patient care, we see the destruction. We see, and it's my patients and we, the British public, that suffer the consequences. But the truth is, the Tories are running scared. That's why they tell the media the NHS is not for sale. But they also told the media that we're going to have 60 new hospitals. They were lying. They told the media that we'll have 50,000 new nurses. They were lying. So when they tell us our NHS is not for sale, do you think they are telling the truth? And our NHS is finished. Okay. Right. Our NHS, the values it represents of kindness, of tolerance, treating everyone the same, regardless of your money. But migrant workers built our NHS and work side by side. These values are crucial to our British society. So we have 8 days to save our NHS, save our society, to make your voice heard. Say these 3 words loud and clear so they hear us in those buildings. Our NHS is not for sale. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia, for telling Trump keep his mitts off the NHS. Not for sale! Not for sale! Not for sale! NHS, not for sale! I'm sure that message has got over. Can I now also move you to other events that we've heard in recent weeks and months? The coup in Bolivia against Evo Morales. It's something which was a shock to the system that we thought couldn't happen again, but it has. And we can't have a better speaker than Oli Vargas from the Friends of Bolivia. Oli.
Thank you so much. It's warmed my heart to see expressions like this and so many other expressions in the UK of solidarity with Bolivia. Because Bolivia is the new victim of Donald Trump. Donald Trump has gone around the world sowing destruction, and Bolivia is the new victim. And you know, for him, my country, Bolivia, committed so many crimes. Our first crime was to nationalize our natural resources and become the fastest growing economy in the region. Our second crime was to expel US military bases from our country, to expel the DEA and all of the US agencies that were intervening in our democracy. But the worst crime of all was that we elected an indigenous president that ended 500 years of apartheid that our country has lived. Those are the crimes that we committed. And this is how Donald Trump is restoring democracy, by launching a coup that has launched 2 massacres in just 3 weeks. A coup that's killed 34 people. This is how the US spread democracy. This is what they mean when they spread. They mean destroying indigenous democracies and imposing puppet governments that massacre the people. And I tell you, we're facing an election in this country as well. And if they can do it to Bolivia, they can do it anywhere. They can do it to any country that dares to stand up for itself, that dares to elect a government that defends the people, that defends the many rather than the few. And so we need so much more of this. We need to tell the truth. We need to say that first, this was a coup. The US is saying this was a coup. This was a coup. When the military intervened and exiled the elected left-wing president of a country, that is a coup. So we need all of you to spread the news. Say it. We are against this coup. Thank you very much. Viva Bolivia!
Thank you very much indeed, Ollie. It's a great pleasure to welcome our next speaker, who is a powerful advocate for trade justice. Please welcome Nick Dearden from Global Justice Now and representing the Stop Trump Coalition. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you, Kate. Thanks very much. I know it's cold, but thank you so much for coming tonight. And I think we're all here because we know that a trade deal negotiated between Boris Johnson and Donald Trump will be an absolute disaster for us, for our country, and for our health system. And we know that because last week we received the leaked trade papers from the negotiations that Johnson's government has been holding with Trump's government. And they show us really clearly, very, very clearly, that the American healthcare industry and pharmaceutical industry are salivating over our NHS. And when Boris Johnson says, but nothing's been agreed yet, you really have to ask yourself, do you trust that man to resist privatization? Of course we don't trust him, because he doesn't have the power, even if he wanted to resist privatization. And we know he doesn't want to resist it because he's already privatizing the NHS. But a trade deal with the US will accelerate and lock in that privatization. So we've got to stop it. We've got to keep campaigning against it. We've got to say our NHS is not for sale, and that's our message tonight to Donald Trump and to Boris Johnson, not for sale. But I finally want to finish by sending a really strong message to our American friends and colleagues who are in the front line of the battle against this horrific president. And I want to say to those people, we stand with you tonight. That's one of the reasons we're here tonight. We stand with you tomorrow and every day in your work to get rid of this awful man from the White House. Together we can offer hope to those beaten down by years of being told there is no alternative to the ravages of the market. Together, if we believe in ourselves, we can build a better world, a more equal economy and a more sustainable society. There is an alternative. We are the alternative. Keep the faith. Good luck.
Thanks very much indeed, Nick. Now, we all know the amount of money that is spent on militarization, on oppressing people, on building walls, on denying us of our rights. There are huge amounts of money going into the election campaigns of people from the far right who are going to come to power and destroy rights further across Europe and across the globe. They have billionaires on their side. We do not have billionaires on our side, but we have the solidarity of peoples, we have the solidarity of action, we have our collective wisdom as the working class. And we also have what is in your pockets this evening. Because I'm going to ask you please to dig deep, to donate money this evening to support our work against NATO and against Trump and to help pay for today's demonstration and all the mobilization involved. So please, I appeal to you as never before, please give what you can to support this cause of peace and cause of justice globally. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
And can we now ask you, we're going to form up. You can see over there in that direction, maybe you can see the fantastic yellow CND banner and other banners in that direction. So please, if you could start to form up and move in that direction, and very shortly we will be weaving just round a little back street before we hit the Mall and make our march on Buckingham Palace. Thank you very much indeed.
night.